The number one question I'm getting as I travel around the world or talk to world leaders right now is what is happening in America about our politics. They understand America's the place where you can't afford completely crazy politics. You are supposed to push those in power for more evidence and more access. You're supposed to challenge our assumptions and to have higher aspirations for what effective news can do, because a well-informed electorate depends on you.
President Obama spoke at a ceremony for journalists yesterday. He suggested the media is not asking candidates tough questions. Some said that President Obama fielded a lot of softballs in the run-up to 08.
Have you thought of using on the campaign trail and in your speaking engagements more exclamation points?
One of the perks, Senator, of being president of the United States is that you have your own bowling alley. Are you ready to bowl from day one?
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Beatles or Rolling Stones?
Rolling Stones.
Your mom comes from the Pacific Northwest, migrates to Hawaii, goes to college there, right away meets a dashing young Kenyan, gets pregnant.
That's me.
That's you.
People in the mainstream media have been accused of being afraid to speak truth to power, and I've got some truth to power for you right now. I've been observing. Yeah. Your dog looks like he's out of control.
Fox and Friends Weekend co-host and editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller, Tucker Carlson, is with me now. Hi, Tucker. So is President Obama being hypocritical here?
Well, it's ludicrous. I mean, the president's mad at the press to the extent he can't control the press. It's the one sort of part of public life that he doesn't have full dominion over, and that bothers him. But if his argument is that the press isn't asking meaningful questions, I mean, this is the most significant public policy debate I've ever seen in 25 years of covering campaigns. I mean, we're actually debating in public the effects of globalization. We're talking about wages, immigration, trade. I mean, are there bigger topics for a presidential election? No. This is such a disingenuous attack, and the idea that the press created Trump, voters created Trump. Of course. Trump, I mean, how could you ignore him? He's running for president. So it's not as if we could make the editorial decision to not interview a guy who's running for president and getting traction. I mean, it's an absurd
So, Tucker,
criticism.
based on what you said at the beginning of your comments there, I mean, did you make something of the last two State of the Unions where President Obama actually did not sit down with anybody from the mainstream press? He actually went to Google's YouTube stars.
Of course.
Which is a sign, in essence, backs up what you're saying.
I mean, doing interviews with a blogger who, you know, blogs in a giant bowl of cereal or whatever, doing interviews with People Magazine or Us Weekly or other, you know, puffy outlets that wouldn't know a real question if I got in the shower with him, of course. I mean, he's exploited the key weakness of the press, which is there are a lot of people with press passes who aren't actual journalists, and he talks to them because why wouldn't you? You get to control the storyline much better when you're dealing with people like that.
Now, he has said that in the GOP, which I have heard you say is the most honest that you've seen in decades, he says the divisive rhetoric is corroding democracy. Hillary Clinton has criticized the GOP candidates for creating extremist candidates. Here's a comment.
Right.
The same obstructionism that we've seen from Republicans since the beginning of the Obama administration, the same disregard for the rule of law that's given rise to the extremist candidacies of Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. It's corroding our democracy, and it has to stop.
So, Tucker, what do you think about the language that is acceptable from a Democratic candidate versus from a Republican one?
My favorite is Hillary's last line, and it has to stop. This should not be allowed. People with whom I disagree should not be allowed to run for president. You're hearing from her and from the president the same variety of anti-First Amendment activism you're seeing on campuses. If you disagree with me, I'm not going to bother debating you. I'm going to write off what you're saying as extremism, as hate speech, and I'm going to declare you, unable to say it. You shouldn't be allowed to say what you're saying. That's, in effect, what they're claiming. I mean, whatever happened to the idea of a spirited public debate? I mean, we disagree, but let's throw it out there and see who's right. They don't want that. They want to call their opponents names and tell them to shut up.
All right, speaking of spirited debate, the Trump campaign has hired a key campaign convention manager, which many people see as a sign that the Trump camp is preparing for a contested convention. As somebody who knows the system very well, what's your call, Tucker? Are we going to see that?
They hired a guy called Paul Manafort, who's been around Washington forever, knows the system. It was high time they did that. Of course, people in Washington are appalled by Trump. He's the least popular person ever here, ever. I mean, ever. And they're going to try and take it away from him, and they'd really like to give it to Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, though he's not running a single primary, doesn't have a single vote nationally. They want to give it to him, and I think that could happen. I think there'd be massive consequences if it did. But yeah, he needs to get on this right away. They're disorganized to the Trump campaign, honestly. And I think they're going to need to change that if they're going to get the nomination.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who are saying that actually Senator Cruz is a few months ahead of Donald Trump, at least as far as the ground game goes, not the delegate count so far for the primaries. Tucker, great to see you. Thanks for the time.
For having me.
Tucker Carlson with me there. Well, speaking